Hey guys, welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel, where today we've got coverage of England's 3-1 win over Italy at Wembley to secure qualification for the European Championships next summer. And I think in general, you look at a result like a 3-1 win over the Italians, it's got to be a big boost for the squad, it's got to be a big boost for the manager, and also the fans. But today we're going to discuss basically how it happened, how England won the game. Because to be fair, I've seen actually some criticism for Gareth Southgate online. I would imagine most of that was coming at half-time last night. I'd imagine opinions were a little bit different at full-time. But despite winning 3-1, people don't seem to be over the moon, actually, with parts of the performance, which I think might be a little bit harsh. So let's talk about what we saw. We'll use the tactical board today. What we saw early on was an Italian side which aren't going to apply pressure, super high up the pitch. They're not incredibly aggressive in the way that they press. Instead, they're going to drop off into more of a 4-4-2. Frattesi's going to step forward to form that front two. Berardi and El Shaarawy are going to drop a little bit deeper with Barella. And we've got a 4-4-2 like this. Now what Italy are going to do here is that they're not going to apply pressure to the ball, but they're going to cut off passes into the midfield, basically making it quite hard for England to move the ball forward. And this was a problem that England did have in the first half. And this is why at times the game was a little bit slow. Because let's say Trippier's going to push a little bit further forward, Kyle Walker's going to do the same, perhaps Calvin Phillips in spells as well, and you're almost got a bit of a 2-3 shape here. The problem that England have here, though, is that the Italian front two is doing a good job of stopping the ball going into Declan Rice, and if the ball goes wide, Italy have wingers in these areas, and at times it did make the game a little bit stale. Now, fortunately, what England done well at times was dropped two players deeper. Declan Rice would drop into a back three, just to the side of Harry Maguire like this, and Calvin Phillips would then drop in to form a 3-1 shape, and both the fullbacks are going to push quite a bit higher, sometimes overlapping out wide, sometimes coming into these half spaces here. But it's going to look something like this in possession. When England moved to more of this shape, they looked really good on the ball, and also when they increased the speed and the intensity of the passing. Again, at times it was a little bit slow and lethargic, but I felt that every time England sped the play up a little bit, they looked really good on the ball and looked like they could hurt the Italians. And it's because of this new shape in possession. This 3-1 shape like this. Because what it does is it makes it incredibly hard now for these front two for Italy to apply pressure to all angles and cut all angles. If the ball's going to go across like this to Declan Rice, for example, the Italian front two are going to come across, but now you can see that someone like Stones has a lot of room. And all four of these deeper players are very capable on the ball, very good passers of the ball. And it's going to allow England to move the ball forward through the thirds actually quite nicely. And another reason for this is because in these areas, you've got someone like Bellingham finding himself in between Italian players. The other thing that England have in these areas, no matter what the shape is at the time, is really good ball carriers in central areas. Someone like Declan Rice, but also Jude Bellingham. They're incredibly good at carrying the ball forward. And this, to me, is so valuable in modern day football. So many teams these days, when you get the ball into this sort of area, want to go for a man-to-man sort of approach. Something like this. If you have players who can win their man-for-man battles and get past someone, you're going to have a lot of success because suddenly now someone else has to come out and try and deal with you. So I think this is a real bonus that England have in this midfield in particular, with players like Bellingham and Declan Rice. That ability to kind of flick the switch, speed up the tempo a little bit and drive through the heart of the pitch, that's super dangerous. What was also good for England was the ability to rotate. So at times Trippier could perhaps drop into a back three, at times Declan Rice could do it, at times Kyle Walker could do it. And this gives England a lot of flexibility on what they're going to do on the ball, and it allows them to move players into different positions in terms of moving the England attackers into different positions, but of course also the Italian defenders. So at times Foden is picking up wide spaces, but at times he's also moving inside. In terms of once England had progressed into these areas, again for me it was all about the speed with which they're moving the ball. Because by this time the Italian defence had dropped even deeper, and by this sort of spell it was more of a back five, and then more of a 3, and then like a 5-3-2 borderline out of possession. Again, the structure would change. Sometimes Frattesi would be part of the front two, sometimes it'd be Berardi. But when they were in their deeper areas, Italy, it was more of a 5-3-2. And this at times allowed England to take control of the ball. And again, England have a lot of good ball players here. I think the main criticism, and the main thing that I think these players need to focus on, is the tempo of things, the intensity of moving the ball. Because again, when England up the tempo, they're really good. But what you do have to consider is someone like Declan Rice, for example, now playing for Arsenal, of course, is only, what, three months into playing for a proper possession-based side with Arsenal. So he's not used to doing this on a regular basis. Let's talk about by the Euros next summer. He'll have another, 8 months under his belt of playing for a possession side. I think the other trap we sometimes fall into as well is we see what Pep Guardiola does with City, we see what Arteta does with Arsenal, we saw what Klopp done the other year with Liverpool. International football, tactically, just isn't of the level of club football. It just isn't. If you look at the amount of time which managers spend with players at international level compared to club level, it's never going to be of the same tactical level, and the intensity is always a little bit lower as well. Which is why, from an England perspective, having game changers and match breakers like Jude Bellingham, like Harry Kane, like Marcus Rashford, like Phil Foden is absolutely huge. And it's so important for Gareth Southgate that he's got these players that can do this. Someone like Trippier can also provide a bit of magic as well. But in general, it wasn't easy to break down this Italian defence. You know, like I said, when they're dropping into this back five, it's very difficult to break that down. There's a lot of players in these areas. It's difficult to create the overload in the final third because they're defending with a back five. But again, the fact that England have this penetration in the middle of the pitch is really good. And also, because at times it's more of a diamond in midfield like this, it means that England can get players on different lines. Now, the benefit of getting players on different lines is it makes it much harder to defend. If we say Calvin Phillips and Trippier both push really high here, either side of Jude Bellingham, a bit like what we saw in the last international break, it becomes quite easy to defend because Italy know where all the players are. However, when you suddenly get perhaps Calvin Phillips on this line, Trippier on this line here, and then Bellingham's going to pop up on this line here, it causes the opposition to start staggering and being pulled out into slightly different positions. This is when you open up real good passing opportunities through the pitch, and I think we saw this for the first goal. We'll head over to Once Video Analyzer Pro to check it out. So we'll check out the first goal here. This is leading up to the penalty. We can see that England are in more of a 3-2 at a time. So John Stones is the middle centre-back, Harry Maguire is at left centre-back, Kyle Walker at right centre-back, and then we've got Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips. But the important thing, what we're going to see in this particular move, is that players are staggered and on different lines. Calvin Phillips here, he isn't directly in line with Declan Rice. If he was, it would be a lot easier to defend. Let's say we take Calvin Phillips and put him here, that would be really easy for the Italians to deal with. So the fact that they're on different lines is really important. And it means that someone like Declan Rice can open himself up and make himself available for the pass. But also we see higher up the pitch players are on different lines as well now. Because again, if we look at our midfield three, Declan Rice, Calvin Phillips and Jude Bellingham, they're all on different lines to each other. Which means that you can move the ball forward. If you look at those Italian defenders, they're very staggered in the way that they are now defending. And that's because England have done a good job of pulling them apart. Again, if we mark the three of them here, that's a very zigzaggy approach. It's not how you want to defend because it means a couple of quick popped passes around the corner can really hurt you. Now, on this occasion, all it takes is a bit of pure quality from Declan Rice. This pass is absolutely ridiculous. Takes three players out of the game with one straight pass through. A lot of them, we know that Jude Bellingham has that flair to his game. He plays the flick around the corner. Harry Kane does brilliantly holding the ball up. Jude Bellingham races past and wins the penalty, which, of course, Harry Kane scores. But I think that winning of the penalty kind of highlighted what England need to do a little bit more. They need to understand how to manage the tempo and how to have that speed up of play. Make sure they've got players on different lines like we saw in that move there. And England have real quality which will hurt a lot of teams. A lot of teams because it's really hard to deal with that play. So I thought England certainly showed signs of promise in possession. I don't think it was perfect by any means, but I like the idea of the structure. For me, it's more about understanding rotations, when you're going to move into different little pockets, when you're speeding the play up, when you're slowing the play down. But the standouts in possession for me, I thought Declan Rice was absolutely brilliant once again. I thought Jude Bellingham, best player on the pitch, absolutely incredible. I thought Harry Kane's hold-up play and link play was incredible. And also, you know, Marcus Rashford, Foden, they could have done with getting more of the ball, but when they did get their ball, they were threatening. But how about from a defensive side of things? Now, from a defensive point of view, more than anything, I was shocked. Gareth Southgate is quite a pragmatic manager, a cautious manager, whose first thought is always, you know, keeping it tight at the back, making sure you don't leave spaces and don't concede chances. Which is why it surprises me when he goes for such an aggressive man-to-man press, with even the fullbacks connected to pressing high up the pitch. That's an incredibly bold and brave thing to do. So it looks a little bit like this. Harry Kane's going to force the ball one way. Let's say Donnarumma plays the ball to Acerbi. He gets the ball here. Now Harry Kane's going to come across like this. Foden obviously is tying up the winger here. Kyle Walker's here. Sorry, Foden on the fullback, not the winger. Jude Bellingham, for example, is going to go on to Cristante. You're going to go man for man in midfield like this. However, what happens in this sort of press is that on the other side of the pitch, you have two players who are free, Scalvini and Di Lorenzo, up against Marcus Rashford, which is, of course, a worrying sign. However, England addressed this by being super aggressive, because Marcus Rashford would then come inside here, and as this ball would go backwards to Donnarumma, even Trippier is going to come all the way up. So this is your left back pressing the right back in the final third of the pitch from things like goal kicks, which means that England then essentially drop into a back three like this. They narrow off a little bit with Maguire, Stones and Walker. This is an incredibly bold, aggressive way of pressing the ball. So I was actually really excited to do it. It's my favourite pressing structure in the world. And what you can see, and what we did see during the match, was plenty of occasions where England are nicking the ball back in dangerous areas, and Italy weren't always able to play out from the back. However, the thing with this Italy squad is they have a lot of really good technical players, and I actually thought in possession Italy were really good. We're not really going to talk about them today or put much focus on them, but they deserve a lot of credit. I thought on the ball they looked absolutely brilliant at times, really technically secure, really sharp with their passing. They were really on it, and that's going to cause a problem for England, because a man-for-man press is brilliant, right? Because it gives no player space. However, it also means that you have to win your individual battle, because if you don't, you're going to be exposed. And the problem that England had at times was that when you're pressing, Marcus Rashford and Phil Foden, the two wider players who are going to engage in this press, they aren't the most intense pressers in the world. They're not. I actually think the pair of them worked really hard, and Gareth Southgate actually singled out Marcus Rashford for praise after the game, saying, "I'd love to see how much ground he covered." I think Marcus Rashford worked really hard, but with him and Foden, they can work as hard as you like. They're not that intense in the way that they tackle and approach duels and try and win the ball back, which at times does cause problems. And I think we saw that for the first goal. England just kind of lose their individual battles and Italy are able to move their way through the team. It's definitely a problem. However, what you do have in this side is Declan Rice, Calvin Phillips and Jude Bellingham, who are all incredible athletes, and their energy levels are absurd. Really absurd. Now, I think Jude Bellingham at times needs to do a better job of negatively transitioning towards his own goal. I think at times if England lose the ball and it goes towards the England goal, Jude Bellingham kind of has that split second where he goes, okay, now I need to get back. He needs that kind of quicker switch on at times, so perhaps that's something he can work on in his career, although I'm not going to criticise him too much. But it did leave England a little bit open to transition at times. However, in general, I think 9 times out of 10 they actually defended the situation really well. The likes of Bellingham, Calvin Phillips, Declan Rice would get back in behind the ball. Marcus Rashford was putting in a brilliant shift to track Di Lorenzo. Foden was doing something similar down this side. Again, they're not that intense, but the work rate was good to see. We saw some good blocks from the likes of John Stones, Harry Maguire, Declan Rice. Pickford makes a really good save. So there's definitely defensively still a question mark there, but this was a relatively new approach for England. We don't see them this aggressive very often. So this is, I think, for me, something more which we need to look at moving forward. Are we going to see it in the next set of the next set of qualifiers, friendlies before the tournament? It's just something to keep an eye on. But I think what you do have with this side is just combative players in the midfield, energetic players. And we actually saw that for was it the third goal? No, it was the second goal. So if we go over to it, this is the first goal. Hang on 1 second. Let me just find it real quick for you guys. So here, we're going to see the best of this England side, in my opinion. First of all, you've got Declan Rice, who's dropped in at centre-back, puts in a crunching tackle. The ball moves across to Jude Bellingham, who puts in another crunching tackle. Now, just remember where Jude Bellingham first puts his tackle in, alright? Just remember where he's done that. He puts the tackle in. The ball eventually falls for Phil Foden, whose first touch is good. He's a good technical player, carries the ball forward, carries the ball out of this little bit of pressure. And then what he does is plays a brilliantly scooped pass to Jude Bellingham. This pass is genius. The way he lifts it is absolutely brilliant. But Jude Bellingham, who previously put that tackle in, is now making a run forward. And this is the energy levels, the athleticism I'm talking about. This touch is then absolutely brilliant. He's going to lift it over this defender here, completely take him out of the game, stride his way past him. I mean, he could easily fall off balance here, but again, he's really striding forward here. It's absolutely brilliant to see. This athleticism. Plays the ball wide to Marcus Rashford, and we know what Rashford wants to do in this sort of situation. Get the ball inside onto his right foot. He's always looking to shoot at goal. But Jude Bellingham's role isn't finished. So he put a tackle in on the edge of his own penalty area. He's then got up, moved forward into space, received the ball, then carried the ball a very decent amount of the pitch. But his work isn't done there. He keeps running forward. He keeps being positive. He then has the intelligence to manipulate space and move the Italian defenders out of the way, kind of putting his bit of doubt in their mind as he runs across here, because Rashford could now play the reverse ball. Rashford doesn't. He comes inside onto his right foot, shoots a goal. It is absolutely brilliant. It's an incredible finish. It's a brilliant goal all round. We can argue he probably should have passed to Harry Kane, but when he puts it in the back of the net, it's hard to complain too much. And I just thought this really captured what this England side could be incredible at. The combative nature of Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham initially, then the technical quality on display, the driving power on the counter-attack, the speed from the wings, and the beautiful finish at the end of it. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. Now, in terms of a more sustained possession, I still think there's work to do, again, in terms of managing tempo. But I think this was a good game. I think Gareth Southgate deserves credit. I thought tactically he got it spot on. Even what we saw in the second half at times was when England were deep, you know, we said about those problems earlier. At times Pickford would step a little bit higher and create more of a back three. This was something else which worked quite well and made it difficult for Italy to press the ball. In general, I think Southgate had a good night. I think he's had a good international break and learned a lot about a lot of players. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm going to end the video there because I can hear my dog trying to break the door down. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.